At the age of 82, I've learned a great deal about life. But one decision weighs heavily on my heart with regret: moving into a nursing home. Back then, it seemed like the right path, a peaceful harbor for my old age. My family, with all their love and concern, wholeheartedly encouraged me to choose this route. They painted a beautiful picture, a place where I would receive dedicated care, live in comfort and tranquility, no longer burdened by the everyday worries of life. I believed in those sweet promises, dreaming of a serene, carefree existence. But alas, life isn't always a fairy tale. The moment I stepped into the nursing home, my illusions shattered. The harsh reality was far removed from my imagined paradise. This so-called heaven for the elderly turned out to be a gilded cage, imprisoning freedom and robbing me of life's most precious treasures. I know that perhaps among those watching this video, there are many who are also considering a nursing home, either for themselves or for loved ones. Maybe you believe it's the safest decision, the best solution to ensure the health and safety of the elderly. Or perhaps you've heard it said that a nursing home will make life easier and more comfortable. But please, pause for a moment before making that decision. Before you sign the admission papers, before you cross that threshold, I earnestly urge you to listen to these heartfelt words, to reflect on these 6 things I wish someone had told me before I moved into a nursing home. Because the truth is, life in a nursing home is not just about material comfort, it's a profound trade-off. A fundamental and deeply impactful change. Once you've stepped through that door, returning to a normal life is not as simple as you might think. Please stay with me. Follow this video to the very end, because the lessons I'm about to share may startle you, make you reconsider, and if you know someone contemplating a nursing home, please share this video with them. Who knows, these sincere words might help them make a wise decision, a decision they won't regret later. Now, let's delve into the bitter lessons I've experienced in the nursing home. Lesson 1. Loss of independence, the biggest shock. The biggest, most devastating shock I faced after moving into the nursing home wasn't the cramped room. It wasn't the bland meals. It wasn't the unfamiliar faces. But the agonizing realization that I had completely lost control of my own life. Before entering the nursing home, I was still an independent, self-reliant person. I had my own daily routines, habits ingrained deep within my subconscious. I decided for myself when to wake up, when to eat, when to rest. I could freely stroll in my small garden each morning, cook my favorite meals with my own hands, or simply sit quietly in my familiar armchair, absorbed in old books. I was the master of my time, the captain of my own soul. But all that changed when I moved into the nursing home. Immediately, I realized that my time was no longer my own. All activities had to adhere to a rigid schedule, a preset framework, with no room for freedom or spontaneity. Breakfast had to be eaten at a specific time, whether I felt hungry or not. Curfew meant lights out at a set hour, regardless of whether I wanted to stay up late reading or watching TV. To take a walk outside the nursing home grounds, I had to ask the nurse for permission, wait until a staff member was free to escort and assist me. Even the smallest, simplest decisions, like choosing a meal for dinner, or deciding which clothes to wear to suit the weather, became more difficult than ever. Instead of having the freedom to choose, I had to accept what was pre-arranged, to feel grateful for those small favors. I still vividly remember the feeling of disorientation, of emptiness in my first week at the nursing home. Waking up each morning in a strange bed, I no longer felt like I was home. I tried to recapture a bit of familiar warmth by reaching for the book I used to read at home. But as my eyes scanned the room, it struck me, this wasn't my home. My beloved books, my comfortable armchair, the familiar objects that had been with me for so many years, all had vanished. In their place were sterile, cold walls, a stiff bed I hadn't chosen, and a feeling of helplessness and self-pity engulfing my soul. I was no longer the master of my own life. I had lost the independence and freedom I had always cherished. And the most painful thing was, I realized that once you let go of your independence, regaining it is almost impossible. You are forced to adapt to the new life. No matter how stifling and uncomfortable it may be, you gradually stop arguing, accepting what others arrange for you. When they bring you a plate of food you don't like, you just have to swallow it down. When you want to take a walk in the garden, but the nurse says you have to wait your turn, you can only wait in silence. You learn to integrate into the system, to live within the nursing home's framework. But in that process, you gradually lose your own identity, lose what makes you, you. If you are considering moving into a nursing home, please ask yourself an important question. Am I truly ready to give up the small freedoms? Those seemingly insignificant things that make my life mine? Because once those things disappear, you will realize how much you missed and cherished them, perhaps even more than you could ever imagine. Lesson 2. Feeling forgotten, the utter loneliness. One of the harshest, most cruel truths you face when moving into a nursing home is realizing that the outside world continues to move on, continues to flow, but you have been left behind. Life outside is still bustling and vibrant, but you have been separated from that flow, isolated in a lonely, monotonous oasis. When I first moved into the nursing home, my family reassured me that they would visit often, that they wouldn't abandon me. I believed those promises, and indeed, in the beginning, they kept their word. My beloved daughter visited regularly once a week. My playful, adorable grandchildren often stopped by every weekend. During that short period, I still felt somewhat connected to my old life, still linked to the outside world. But as time went on, things gradually changed. Visits became less frequent. My daughter started calling instead of visiting in person. My grandchildren were busy with schoolwork, stressful exams, and part-time jobs to earn a living. Promises to visit were forgotten. Visit plans were postponed time and time again, and eventually vanished into thin air. Suddenly, I found myself sitting alone in my quiet room, or silently observing other residents in the common room. Their eyes were dull, lifeless, gazing towards the entrance door, as if waiting for a miracle, waiting for someone to remember them, to come and take them out of this suffocating, oppressive world. It's not that my family stopped loving me. I know they still loved me, still worried about me, but the pace of life is too fast, too hurried, sweeping everything away. When you are no longer by their side every day, when you are no longer an essential part of their lives, people easily forget your existence, easily assume you are fine, that you are adjusting well to the new life, that you no longer need as much attention and care as before. But the truth is quite the opposite. The longer you stay in a nursing home, the lonelier and more isolated you feel. The more you yearn to meet your loved ones, your friends, the more you need their care, their love, their sharing. I still vividly remember one evening, sitting alone in my room, holding my cell phone in my hand, hesitating whether to call my son or not. I was afraid of bothering him, afraid of becoming a burden to him. I didn't want to remind him that I was here, waiting expectantly for a visit that might never come. Finally, I put the phone down, sighing deeply. It was at that moment that a feeling of bitterness and self-pity welled up, choking my heart. Is this my life now? Each day passing by is just a monotonous, meaningless repetition. I can only sit here, waiting, hoping that someone will remember me, will come and bring me a little warmth of family love. If you are seriously considering moving into a nursing home, please ask yourself a sincere question. Am I ready to face the loneliness and emptiness? Because, no matter how much your family loves you, once you are out of their sight, it is inevitable that you will gradually be forgotten. It's a cruel law of life, and no one can escape it. Lesson 3. Loss of purpose, a meaningless life. When I decided to move into the nursing home, I naively believed that I was simply changing my place of residence, changing my living environment. I didn't foresee that, along with the change of location, I would also lose my reason for living, lose the meaning of life. In my beloved home, I had countless responsibilities, though small, but incredibly important. I had daily routines, habits that had become an indispensable part of my daily life. I had my own hobbies and passions, things that made me feel happy and excited. And all those things, even the smallest tasks like watering the plants, brewing a hot cup of coffee, or tidying up the house, gave me a sense of purpose, a consciousness that I was still useful, still contributing to this world. But upon stepping into the nursing home, all of that vanished like soap bubbles. Daily routines disappeared. Meals were cooked for me. Clothes were laundered for me. The house was cleaned for me. Even the lovely potted plants that I used to care for were no longer mine. Initially, I comforted myself that this was an opportunity for me to rest, to relax after a lifetime of hard work. No more worries about food and clothing. No more busying myself with nameless housework. I would just enjoy a peaceful, leisurely life. But after only a few short weeks, I realized that something incredibly important was missing from my life. The days in the nursing home became long, drawn out, and meaningless. I had nothing to do, no goals to pursue. Time just passed by meaninglessly. I could only sit and wait, waiting for something I myself couldn't quite define. I wasn't the only one feeling this way. I witnessed the same decline in purpose in many other elderly friends in the nursing home. People who had once been dynamic, active individuals, full of enthusiasm, now became sluggish, listless, losing all vitality. They spent the whole day just sitting in one place, staring blankly into the void, waiting for time to pass slowly and heavily. I remember Mr. George, an 84-year-old man who had been a skilled carpenter his entire life. At home, he was always busy, fixing one thing after another, handcrafting small wooden items in his garage. He felt life had meaning when he was creating, when he was making useful products. But in the nursing home, he had no tools, no materials, no projects to undertake. I watched him gradually close himself off, becoming quiet and less talkative. His hands, once strong and skillful, now just trembled, lifelessly placed on his lap. "I feel useless," Mr. George confided in me one day, his voice sad and heavy. I understood more than anyone what he was going through. When you no longer have anything to care for, no goals to strive for, life gradually loses its meaning. The mind becomes slow and sluggish. The body follows suit and weakens. Before long, you start to feel like just another nameless resident in a dreary nursing home, where time still passes, but nothing ever really changes. If you are considering moving into a nursing home, please ask yourself once more, what truly gives meaning to my life? What makes me feel alive, feel existent? Because once you move in here, finding purpose in life is no longer as simple as filling your free time. It's a persistent battle, a continuous effort to hold on to the sacred, precious things, the things that make you feel you are still a human being, still worth living. Lesson 4. Rapid health decline, physical deterioration. Before moving into the nursing home, I was still confident in my health, at least for my age. I was no longer fit enough to run marathons, but I could still take care of myself, walk in the park near my house, and cook simple meals with my own hands. I had healthy daily habits, gentle physical activities that helped me maintain my health and agility. From grocery shopping to doing some morning exercises, or simply walking around the house to keep my legs moving, all of it contributed to helping me live healthily and happily. But once I moved into the nursing home, everything changed dramatically. Initially, it felt like I was resting, enjoying a leisurely life. Meals were brought to my room. I no longer had to toil in the kitchen to cook. If I needed anything, I just had to press the nurse call button. and someone would come to help immediately. However, what I didn't realize was that this excessive convenience was silently robbing me of my health. Day by day, I moved less and less. Day by day, I became weaker and weaker. I no longer walked as much as before. My legs became stiff and heavy. I sat more, lay down more, and before long, even getting up from a chair became a difficult, strenuous task. The muscles that I had painstakingly built and maintained for so many years were now disappearing faster than ever expected. And I wasn't the only one experiencing this situation. I witnessed similar health declines in many other elderly friends in the nursing home. People who had walked in here on their own 2 feet, after a short time, had to rely on wheelchairs, on the help of others. People who had previously been self-reliant and independent in all activities now needed assistance even in the simplest personal tasks. The more help we received, it seemed, the weaker we became, the more we needed help. I remember Mrs. Alice, my kind neighbor in the nursing home. She was an 81-year-old woman, very active and agile when she first moved in. She used to walk around the nursing home grounds every day, and always insisted that age was just a number. She wouldn't let old age slow her down. But after a few months, I noticed Mrs. Alice was no longer walking as much as before. Then gradually, she started using a walker, then a wheelchair. One day, Mrs. Alice sadly confided in me. "I don't know what happened. In just a few short months, I feel like I've aged 10 years. That was exactly the feeling that I and many others here were experiencing. When you stop moving your body, you start losing your strength, your agility, and your ability to move. And in an environment like a nursing home, where everything is designed to provide maximum convenience, it's easy to forget that movement is not just an essential need to maintain health, but also a vital factor, determining the quality of life and longevity of each person. If I had known beforehand that I would lose my health so quickly upon moving into the nursing home, perhaps I would have fought harder to keep myself moving, to stay active, to push myself beyond laziness and dependence. If you are considering choosing a nursing home, please ask yourself an important question. Do I have enough motivation, enough willpower to maintain my health and physical agility, when everything around me is arranged to make life easier and more comfortable? Because once you slow down, once you give up, getting back up and starting again is not as easy as you might think. Lesson 5. Loss of privacy and dignity, stripped of personhood. One of the crucial aspects that I didn't consider thoroughly enough before moving into a nursing home was the extent to which I would lose my privacy and dignity. In my beloved home, I always enjoyed a private, comfortable space. I could close my bedroom door to enjoy absolute quiet, could freely do what I liked without fear of being disturbed or scrutinized. I was the master of my living space. I had the right to decide everything within my home. But when I moved into the nursing home, privacy became a luxury, a privilege that you couldn't always keep. From the very first days, I felt like I was living in a glass cage. Every action, every gesture being monitored and watched. Medical staff entered and left my room frequently to check my health, measure blood pressure, and dispense medication. Daily schedules were pre-arranged, leaving no room for personal freedom. Even common spaces like the dining room, living room, and hallways were always crowded with people coming and going, noisy and bustling, rarely offering a moment of quiet privacy. Even the simplest personal activities like bathing, changing clothes, or using the toilet often required the help of others. I understand that the medical staff were just doing their jobs. They had no intention of invading my privacy. But having to accept help with things that I had always done independently throughout my life was truly not easy. I still remember my first week in the nursing home, struggling with the idea that from now on, I would have to ask permission from others to do things that I used to do naturally, comfortably, without thinking. Want to take a bath? You might have to wait until a nurse is available to help you. Need to use the restroom? Sometimes pressing the nurse call button also meant waiting longer than necessary. Even meal choices were limited to a few preset options. If you didn't like a certain dish on today's menu, then you just had to accept it. There was no other choice. And another delicate issue was having to share a room with a stranger. Not everyone in the nursing home could afford a private room. Having to share living space with a stranger, someone you didn't know, didn't choose, could cause a lot of inconvenience and discomfort. I was lucky to have a kind and easygoing roommate, but I also heard stories about other unfortunate cases, where roommates were too noisy, too messy, or even suffered from cognitive impairments, making it nearly impossible for others to sleep. And no matter how hard you tried to decorate and arrange your room, it never truly became home. A nursing home, no matter how comfortable, is just a temporary residence. A brief stopover in the final journey of life. You can't find here the warmth, familiarity, and sense of belonging like in your beloved home. Dignity is something extremely precious and sacred to every human being. And I didn't realize how much of my dignity I would have to trade, to sacrifice, until I had actually stepped into the nursing home. When people knock on your door, but don't always wait for you to answer before entering. When you are spoken to like a patient, a subject needing care, rather than an independent human being with your own emotions and thoughts. When your daily routines are dictated by a schedule you didn't create, you will gradually feel change, transformed. You begin to feel less like yourself, and more like just another nameless name on a long list of nursing home residents. If you are considering moving into a nursing home, please ask yourself a serious question. Am I prepared to give up the privacy and control over my life that I have had throughout my life? Because once you have lost those things, regaining them is extremely difficult, almost impossible. Lesson 6. Realizing leaving is harder than you think, permanently trapped. When I first moved into the nursing home, deep down in my heart, I still harbored the hope that this was just a temporary solution. I told myself that I would try living here for a while. See how things went. If I felt it wasn't suitable, wasn't comfortable, I could always leave, return to my beloved home. But what I didn't foresee was how difficult it would be to leave the nursing home. Once you had stepped through this door, at first glance, everything seemed simple. If I didn't like life here, I would just pack my bags and go home. But reality was not so simple. My house was no longer the same as before. It had become empty, cold, lacking the warmth of human presence. Maintaining and caring for the house from a distance became extremely difficult. My children, with good intentions, had started making changes in my house. They sold off items they thought I would no longer need. They even considered renting out the place to generate extra income. When I mentioned the idea of returning home, my children hesitated, worried. Are you sure you can manage on your own? Mom, would it be safer to stay here? We only want what's best for you. And then, another intractable problem arose. My physical decline. After months of living in a nursing home, where I didn't have to cook, didn't have to clean, didn't even have to walk much, my health had noticeably weakened. The independence and self-reliance I had once been proud of had gradually slipped away. The thought of moving back home, living alone, became more difficult and frightening than ever imagined. I no longer had enough confidence in my ability to care for myself, to manage everything in daily life, and that vague fear tied me down, trapping me in the nursing home. Unable to escape, I met and talked with many other elderly friends in the nursing home, and realized that I wasn't the only one in this predicament. Many of them had also thought that the nursing home was just a temporary solution. They would only stay here for a short time and then leave. But in the end, they realized that leaving the nursing home was not as easy as they had thought. The longer you stayed in the nursing home, the harder it became to adapt to life outside. Some people even completely lost the opportunity to return home when their house had been sold, or when their life savings had been depleted by the expensive cost of care. There was no turning back. That is the stark, cruel truth that no one wants to tell you. When you first move into a nursing home, you might mistakenly believe that this is a reversible decision, that you can always change your mind and leave at any time. But for most people, the nursing home becomes an invisible trap. Once it has sprung, it is very difficult to escape. The nursing home gradually becomes your whole world, and before you realize it, the outside life you once knew, once loved, has become a distant, hazy memory. If you are considering moving into a nursing home, please ask yourself one final question, but also the most important question: am I prepared for the possibility that once I step through this gate, leaving may no longer be as simple as I think? Because once you have settled into life in the nursing home, the barriers preventing you from leaving, whether financial, physical, or emotional, may become larger, more insurmountable than you might expect. Final thoughts. Reflecting on a life decision. Looking back at the time that has passed, I don't regret growing old. I don't regret the traces of time etched deep on my face and body. Old age is an inevitable law of life. No one can escape it. But I truly regret ever believing that a nursing home was my only option. My final path to take. I stepped into the nursing home with expectations of comfort, safety, and a better quality of life. But what I received was quite the opposite. The nursing home, instead of bringing me a peaceful, happy life, gradually robbed me of my independence, my privacy, my purpose in life, and even my sense of self. Does that mean all nursing homes are bad, are terrible? Not necessarily. I know that some people genuinely need the specialized care that nursing homes provide. There are cases where a nursing home is an unavoidable choice, the only solution to ensure the health and safety of the elderly. But before you make this important decision, please think very carefully. Consider thoroughly what you will have to trade, what you will have to sacrifice. Because once you have moved into a nursing home, your life will never be the same again. If I could do it all over again, I would choose a different path. I would fight harder to stay in my beloved home, where I had spent my whole life. I would seek out home care solutions, in-home care services, so that I could both receive health care and maintain my independence and freedom. I would make sure that only when it was truly necessary, when there were no other options left, would I consider moving into a nursing home. And if you are facing this difficult decision, I hope that you will take the time to listen to your heart. To ask yourself sincerely, is this truly what's best for me? Or is this just the solution that seems easiest, most convenient at the moment? Because the life you have today, your daily routines, your independence, your choices and decisions, are all incredibly precious, worth cherishing and holding onto for as long as possible. Thank you for listening to these heartfelt words from my soul. We are eager to receive your feedback. Please leave a comment below this video, and share one thing you have learned today, and how you plan to apply this lesson to your life. Your thoughts and feelings are very important to us, so don't hesitate to share them with everyone. Reading your comments brings us immense motivation and encouragement. If you found this video helpful and meaningful, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your loved ones. Your support will motivate us to continue creating valuable content to inform and inspire you. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.